Welcome to Release Your Inner Power and Boost Your Week with Ignited Decisions podcast. I'm Shauna B., a life and mindset coach, here to help busy women like you find time, happiness, and ways to fill themselves up in your everyday life. Each week, we dive into real-life challenges, from being a mom to career changes to taking time for yourself, recharging, and personal growth, so you can take action and create this part of your life right now that you truly love. Ready to make this week better than the last? Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Release Your Inner Power podcast. Today, I have a guest on the show. Her name is Elise. Welcome, Elise, to the show. I'm excited to chat with you today.
I am super stoked and also overly caffeinated to be here. So I think today's going to be a really spicy, interesting conversation. I'm excited.
I love that. Overly caffeinated. I do that a lot too. That's also something I do where I'm like, am I still tired? Do I need more coffee? Oh, well, we'll just have more coffee. And then I'm like buzzing around like a crazy person. And I'm like, whoa, way too much coffee.
And this is such BS for me because it's like when I'm awake and I'm actively doing stuff and caffeinated, I don't feel the caffeine and I still feel tired. But it's not until later when I'm trying to go to sleep where I'm like, oh, I could probably do a couple of loads of laundry right now at 3:00 in the morning. Then I'm like, oh, it was the coffee I had at 2 p.m.
Totally. That is definitely a thing. Well, I know a little bit about you, but introduce yourself to the listeners and tell us who Elise is.
Yeah, so I am a mindset coach and I like to call myself a transformation coach rather than a trauma coach. But I do specialize in trauma, complex PTSD, childhood trauma, sexual abuse trauma. Like really, I love being the coach that specializes when people feel the most broken.
That is so needed. That is so needed, and how useful to be able to help people to work through that, because that's like, so I can imagine like freeing and like I can't even describe the words. It's just the feeling of like a deep exhale of all of that, shaking it off. Like, so
yeah, and I don't know about anybody else, but it seems like since COVID 2020, the world has become more unhinged. I feel like this is really the time for coaches to step up and be like, hey, world, do you need help? Like,
and really to like, because I feel like some people really know of what coaching is. And then some people are like, is that like a counselor? You know what I mean?
No.
Like they kind of mix it up. And it's kind of like, no, it's kind of like how I think of it is it's like your hype girl that gives you these serious tools that like you can do it. So you have like this person in your corner that's like do it, like that's with you, even like when it's bad or hard or whatever, but they give you things to do to help you work through. It's like locking arms and like, come on, let's do this together. And then they're setting them free to be able to do it on their own. It's not like healing it. It's like the after part. It's like the moving forward part.
Yes. And that's what I absolutely love because we really are the best friend energy. I call myself the mental health girly, your mental health girly, because even though we do work with such really big things and I give my clients tools to move through it, like really, I'm giving my clients the tools that worked for myself. I'm giving you guys advice on how I went through it. So that way, through all my trial and error, so that way you guys don't have to do the trial and error and the years of trying to figure this ish out.
Yeah. Like these tools we used in our 10 years of figuring it out, we can like slam it into like months and be like, let me give you these little packaged up gifts so you can do this in X amount of time instead of taking the 10 years that I took to figure this out.
Oh my God. It's like the realest thing ever. That is the realest thing ever. We're taking the stuff that like we used ourselves and we're just streamlining it for the next person with some best friend energy in there, because
totally.
If you're not best friends with your coach, like, what are you doing?
Yeah. It's to feel that vibe out with your coach and be like, ooh, I really like this person. It adds to it. There's so much more there that adds to it when you're
I am so grateful. I am now friends with 100% of the people who used to be my clients. And we have such good friendships now.
I love that. I love that. It's it's such a win-win, right? It's such a win-win experience to be able to help somebody, but like see them go through it and their whole transition and like change and all this. And you're like, ooh, you're like almost as excited as them. You're like, oh, I just want to like, you just want to like freak out for them and just be like,
Yeah.
it's so cool. And then just to see them and how happy they are and everything, I don't even know how to describe it. Like you'd have to go through the feeling to know what I mean.
Yes. 100,000%. So like the best way I can describe it, I was helping I was at a jujitsu tournament. I do jujitsu and I train jujitsu, but I was just warming up the kids for like their rounds. And we're going over, like, we're remembering some techniques. It's like, okay, this is how you do a judo grip. This is how you step in and do a takedown. This is how you trip somebody to get them on the ground. And then like when you're watching them in the mat, they're recalling that information and they're winning their matches because you coached them on it. Yeah. And it's the same thing with my clients and like their dating life and picking better men and managing the big emotions and knowing how to handle themselves when triggers come up and seeing that they're like their depression and their anxiety used to span for like weeks or even months is now maybe a couple days or a couple of hours, and they have such a better quality of life. It's like, this is why I do the shit that I do. Like, this is why I signed up for this.
Absolutely. To get out of it faster because you have it there to utilize. 100%. I love that. Instead of months, it's like days. Yes. But that is so true. That is so true. Thank you for saying that, because that like puts it into perspective too. Like when you're in the trench, it's so much easier to get out of it when you have that stuff in place.
Yeah. And especially when you're able to like self-identify something's going on, like what's going on. You're like, oh, is this just a chemical reaction I'm having because my nervous system is used to being in chaos? Or is there something actually happening in my external world that I have control over and can deal with?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, my favorite.
So tell me a little bit more about you and your path to becoming this coach, because you're right. I feel like all coaches have some life experience which has led them to be coaches, to coach other people through it. So tell me more of your story and, you know, why you ended up becoming a coach.
So you heard that like long list of traumas that I specialize in, like in the intro. Yeah, hi, 100% personal experience. I became a coach because and, you know, I don't know exactly, I'm not going to give details that, you know, I don't feel comfortable giving just yet, and that's totally fine. Absolutely. But my childhood was chaotic AF. Like, I had no safe space at home or at school as a child. Like, it was literally like my fight or flight was on and survival was on until I dropped out of high school. And at least that got the school aspect out of the way. It didn't take care of the stuff that was happening at home. But at least I didn't have to go to school anymore and deal with like the teachers and the peers that were just literally hunting me on a daily basis. Like, I was literally hunted at school, and it was the wildest feeling ever. You don't even feel like a human at that point.
Did you feel like you had a tendency to like, I don't want to say hide because it's not like you're hiding, but you just don't talk about it. Like, you just don't bring up the thing that's happening, you know, that you're going through, like with other people. Like, did you do
for
that?
me, it was like
quiet about it.
It was that I went to the adults that I should have counted on really failed me, especially in like the school system. So I went to they tell you, oh, go talk to an adult, which is then like the most bullshit advice ever if you've ever experienced it. I went to my teachers, I went to the principal, I went to the counselors. Nobody did a damn thing. They basically just told me to shut up and deal with it, or that they didn't believe me. So that route was shut down completely. Like, and this was at elementary school, in middle school, and in high school for the brief period of time that I was there. So like literally all three of these systems in place just totally failed.
Yeah.
And when it got to the point in middle school, they really scared me because there was some stuff happening at home that I just needed a safe space to talk about. And they were threatening me. And they said, well, if you keep talking about it, this is really going on, we're going to take you away from your home.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make any kid clam up and just want to talk.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you said, when you go through those things anyway, like your space, your comfortable space is your home regardless of what is happening there, right? Because that's like your home space. And so if they're like, take you away, you're like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
that's all I know. And you want to like
Yeah.
take me away. So yeah, you're like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Just not
So at
talking
that
about
point,
it.
I just totally shut down. And I was like 11 when I shut down. And that was hard.
Mm-hmm.
So you literally you just endure it. And yeah, I did try hiding a lot after that because, like, if people can't see me, they can't abuse me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like the mentality that I took. Yeah, that was the mentality that I took. And then I dropped out of high school, and it was just like the endless string of toxic relationship or abusive relationship after toxic and abusive relationship. So there was really no break for me anywhere in my life, really, until like I got to God, just like a couple years ago. But at that point, if you're not treated like a human being as a child, you don't believe that you're a human being. And I really wish I could describe what it felt like to not even feel like a human being.
Yeah.
And I wish I could tell you what my lowest point in my life was, but it's so hard when, like, you're born into a chaotic environment and you just don't get out of it. There's really no low point. It's all a low point. So, zero self-esteem. I hated myself to the point I tried to end my life on numerous occasions, starting when I was 8 years old. I didn't know what the word suicide was. I just know I didn't want to be around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly those attempts failed. But and
Yeah.
it's okay to laugh at that. It's okay to laugh at that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, so at the age of 26, it was fresh after COVID. I was in a narcissistic relationship for 8 years, and I just couldn't take it anymore with him. And this really was like the moment where I was like, I have to do something to get better, or I'm gonna end up killing myself. And like, I'll make sure it's a successful attempt this time. And I finally found a coach that was able to help me. I spent years in therapy and just trying different things like, Reiki and, other sorts of blah, blah, blah stuff, going to like weird cult churches. Like, I was one of those people who was looking for relief anywhere. And I just found like more crazy shit or shit that didn't work. I finally found a coach on Instagram, and we connected like right away. She and I still are friends to this day, which I'm so happy to say. And she was the first person in my life that was actually able to help me. And when I first started working with her, I truly, to my core, believed I was too broken to be saved. And I had zero faith in the process, like none. But I just did the homework that she gave me every day. And then after 30 days, I noticed things in my body started changing. And at first it was scary as shit because like you're used to being miserable and suicidally depressed every day of your life for 26 years. And now suddenly you wake up and you're like kind of happy. You're like, what the fuck just happened to my body?
You're like, what is going on? Am I scared about this? Yes.
Like,
This is
being
scary.
happy,
What is this? Yes.
terrifying. You
Yeah.
woke up and suddenly you're just like not in pain anymore. You're just like, am I dead? Like, you're just so confused.
Yes. Yes. But how
And
profound at the same time, right? Because you're used to feeling a certain way and then starting to feel different. Like it is scary and like kind of
yes,
anxious about it. But at the same time, you were fully aware that this is different and you were more curious about like, well, what is this? And
yeah,
can I feel more of this? Like, is this gonna
yeah,
feel like amazing? Because it doesn't feel like that. It feels like this, but I'm not really
yeah.
sure what's
So
going
it's like happiness was the most okay, sorry, I wasn't happy at that point yet. That was a process, but being like content and not depressed
on. Mm-hmm.
was the weirdest, most empty feeling ever. Like it,
What got you to keep, was it because you were in a program for X amount of time that you were just like, okay, I'm gonna keep going, or did you just get enough to where you're like, I want to see more into this? Like, what was your
None
next
of those things.
after that?
None of those things. I panicked because it was really such a terrifying feeling. I panicked and I called my coach and she was like, normal. You are normal. And I was like, what do I do with it now? She's like, just keep doing the things that you were doing. And I was like, yay. Like, still not believing in the process, just knowing I'm feeling weird. And then 30 days after that, I started feeling like a bit more settled. And then it just kept going and building on that. And then I just dove into the rabbit hole of just neuroscience, neuroplasticity, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and all of his stuff on Gaia, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Like, I just dove into the world of narcissism, PTSD, the side effects, all of the stuff on the board, and how interconnected everything is, and tying it to my experience. And it now all makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm. So I know that you said that you were in a narcissistic relationship for, you said 8 years.
Yeah.
And like coming out of that, first, like your first thing was to come out of that and have all these different feelings and then work through all of that because that was just different, right? But then when you started, you said tying it to your situation and understanding like this is narcissistic, behaviors and tendencies, and this is the effects of narcissism. Like, then what? Like, then when you started realizing that this is what it is, like, what did you have to work through at that point?
It was hard for me to realize that the person you're with for 8 years is abusive, for starters. Like, you don't, and I see in my clients too that that's where denial comes from. It's like being abused is one of the worst things the human brain can imagine. So it's better like, oh no, you're not going through that. No. Abuse looks like this. What you're going through is an abuse. Like, the brain will use all sorts of like weird, twisted ways to justify what you're going through when it's abuse, just for the sake of protecting you.
Yeah.
So I assure my clients that like when you break through the denial, you're like, that's already more than half the battle, because it really freaking is.
Yeah. Yeah. It is definitely a crazy situation when your brain minimizes it, right?
Yeah.
Minimizes it. And it's like, and then you're questioning, you're like, wait, is it though? Because your brain
Oh,
will
you start
minimize it.
gaslighting
And then you're like
yourself.
fighting with yourself.
Yeah, you start gaslighting yourself. Like, it was one of those things, and this should have been my red flag from the freaking start, where I would be venting to my friends about what he was doing, and I'd be like, oh my God, he did this, and I was thinking it was normal. And my friends were looking at me like, sis, are you okay?
Right.
And they started not universally liking him. And if you find yourself venting to your friends about your relationship, collectively, they all start not liking them.
Mm-hmm.
And you find yourself now going from venting to defending what they did. You need to take a hard fucking look at that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, if you find yourself constantly defending the guy, you need to take a really hard look at that relationship.
Yes. It's so crazy too when you're in it. When you're in it and you're in that scenario, and how you go from venting to defending, like,
yeah,
it's you don't realize it till later, but like when you're in there and then you start doing that, and then you like look back and you're like, oh my gosh, it does some weird takeover. Takeover. It's like a virus in your computer that's like taking over and like doing all this crazy stuff and making you think a certain way. And then when like the fog's lifted, you're like, whoa.
You're like, what the fuck did I just go through?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's so insane. It's so insane.
Yeah.
And then to have to do all of this, like, well, to even leave somebody that is a narcissist is like a whole process in itself.
Oh, girl, it's not a normal breakup. And that's something that I wish
For
people
real, though.
It's not a normal breakup.
For real. Yeah.
It's freaking not. Your brain chemistry is now completely different. than where it was before you were with the narcissist. Being with a narcissist literally causes brain damage.
Yes.
And addictions.
Yes.
Trauma bonds are a real effing thing.
Yes.
Like,
yes. And it's, yes. And to work to do it, to leave, and but then like heal yourself and work through it. Like once you start to see, you can't unsee. Like once you start to see, you start seeing more and more and more and more and more. And then you start realizing more and more. And it seems, as long as you do the work, it seems to, you work through it and you get there. You get there.
Yeah.
So it's not like a never-ending process. Like you get there, but it's more mind-blowing to you because when you get this big picture, because you've actually done the work and like seen it, you're just like, holy, I was dealing with all of that.
Oh my God. And I don't know how anybody else's PTSD flashbacks worked, but mine was almost like a Rolodex. I don't know, like your listeners know what a Rolodex is, but it's like, back in the 80s, before we could save phone numbers in our phones, we had a Rolodex. So it was like a bunch of cards that like spun really fast where you could just go and find a phone number. So it would just really quick.
Mm-hmm.
When I read a new term about narcissism, like future faking, holy shit. And then the Rolodex of memories of every single time he did that to me, and then things would click and I would just be like kind of left breathless, like, whoa, like that's what that was.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would do the same thing with love bombing, with gaslighting, with sexual abuse, with coercion, like all of the things where it just clicked like lightning speed in my brain.
Yes. And which I love that part of the brain because that is validating that there was something else. Like that it's not you. Like you are not the reason because you've been programmed to think that for so long.
Oh
that
my God,
you are not the reason. And then it's like showing you like, see, this is all of this. This is not you. This is this.
Yes.
And this part is not okay, but you're not that.
Yes. Yeah. The hardest one to click was the sexual abuse. When that one clicked, I felt so broken.
Yeah.
Like that one was the one, that one and future faking were the two that like rocked my world.
Tell me a little bit more about future faking. I'm curious.
Yeah. So my ex had this tactic. This man, for the 8 years we were together, had zero intentions of spending a future with me. He just wanted me there so he could have access to whatever it is that he wanted. So he would treat me like shit, treat me like shit, treat me like shit. He would see I was be on the verge of leaving. And it's like, oh, I love you. So it was a little bit of love bombing. Oh, I love you. I want a future with you. And then talk about, the future and blah, 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 and make future plans like a vacation, wedding, blah, 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 with zero intentions of making it happen. So essentially future faking by definition is exactly as it sounds. They will create an image for you to hold on to keep you on the hook.
And then support that with the love bombing and all the things.
Yeah, temporarily, and then things will go back.
Get all nestled back in and be like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. And then they're like, cha-cha.
Yeah. Yeah, 100,000%. Future faking is essentially like a love bombing tool that they will use to just keep you in place by telling you all the stuff that you want to hear about a secure future.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm laughing so much is because I have also lived through this. So it's like, I'm laughing because it's just like, it's a thing. Like this happens. And just like thinking back and just like the process and how it all goes down and just how everything changes in your brain is just like, just bananas. It's bananas. But it can be different. It can be different. I mean, like, look at both of us, right? Like, look at both of us. We've both experienced it. We've both used tools. We both had coaches. We both have done all the things where we come through, and it can be done. It feels impossible in the beginning, but it's 100%.
And this is how I tell my clients too. It's like, I had zero faith that it would work in the beginning. Like, I don't need you to have faith. I just need you to do the homework.
Yeah. You just got to do.
You just got to do the homework. That's all I'm asking you to do right now. You don't have to have a vision for how you want to feel. You don't have to feel a certain way. You don't have to believe in this process. Just do the homework and see what happens in 30 days.
Yeah.
And And this is also like another logic thing that I bring up to my clients as well. I just signed on a client yesterday, and she is a young woman who experienced severe sexual trauma, over the last few years. And this brave, brave, brave young woman put this man behind bars. Like, she is just the picture of strength and resilience. But those emotions, when those feelings feel like they're too big for our body, like, we keep in mind a couple of things. Number one, the trauma already happened. It's not that it's happening again in that moment, even though it feels like it, it's not happening again. Like, the trauma's already happened. It's just living inside of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it's physically impossible for your emotions to be bigger than you. Otherwise, you would have exploded.
Yes.
Literally. Literally. It's just going to suck for a little bit. And you just got to let it suck.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this thing of picturing our emotions like they're this huge, scary, overwhelming monster that's going to drown us, right? But it's not. In reality, it's essentially a small child that's been hurt and really just wants to tell you about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when we make that perspective shift and our emotions are now small and just want to be heard and can't consume us, it makes it so much easier to process and embody what our bodies are trying to tell us about that hurt.
Yeah, and to be able to listen, to be able
Yeah.
to hear it, to be able to, it's interesting how even with our own self, how we're trying to like protect from our own emotions. And so sometimes we'll go through this whole process of either, like
Yep.
putting them in a box or shoving them aside. And it's like, no, if you feel it now, it's much faster than
Yeah.
putting it in a box
Well, if
and then
it's safe,
bringing
like, you
it
don't
back
want to
out.
be
It's like,
like, you don't want to be like driving while processing a trigger. Like,
correct.
Just acknowledge it and be like, okay, this is something I have to address. I'm going to do so when it's like physically safe for me to do so.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Like, it's safe to put it away temporarily, but you
Yes.
just
I
don't
love
want it
that.
living there.
Yes. That's the thing, right? Like, okay, you got to process it now, though. You got to process it now. Don't just leave it in that little box.
When you're going 80 miles an hour down the freeway, like, maybe just put it to the side for now.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Time and place, definitely. But like, it's not going to consume you. It's not going to drown you. It's not going to hurt you. You just need to cry about it for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you said that because, with how big they can feel, it can just be like too overwhelming that you just don't, like you said, it almost feels like you're going through it again, and so you just don't want to do that.
Which is so understandable.
Yeah, it is. It totally is. And it's to just be like okay with how I look, how my perspective is me processing my emotion or my trauma or whatever is happening that is coming up for me processing it is like shedding some of it away. So it may
Yeah.
not all fall away, but a good section of it is now gone because I have let it go, because I've sat with it, because I
Yeah.
processed through it.
Yeah.
And then it may come up again, but it doesn't feel as big the
It's
next.
not as big. Like, it
It's less
starts
and less.
dialing down. Yeah. And that's like really like the thing. It's like, when it does come up, it's like, because sexual assault trauma, sexual abuse trauma is something that, like, I'm probably never going to not be without. But I can tell you right now, I have a very healthy, intimate connection with my partner who absolutely adores the shit out of me. And it doesn't interfere with that anymore.
Right.
Like, it really is so incredible. And the best way that I can describe trauma to my clients who are new to this, it's like, have you ever seen the show Hoarders?
Yeah.
So when you're going into a hoarder house, like, it's overwhelming to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to start with taking out one bag of trash at a time. Because when you take out one bag of trash, you're making space.
Mm-hmm.
And you take out another bag of trash, you're making space. And before you know it, you have a whole room that's clean. And then you just kind of keep chipping away at it until you start seeing more floor, you start seeing more walls, things are getting cleaner. It really is that kind of a process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one little
Yeah.
bag of trash or box at a time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good visual to have for that.
Yeah.
So when you when you decided that like this was enough, like was there a scenario or situation that had you like where it just clicked where you're like, I am done with this. Like I need to move through that. And then once you did once that situation happened and you like got clear, like then like what made you, I don't know, tell me a little bit about like the up and up, like you know, finding the happiness and then getting more and more and like working with your tools and then like basically bringing into this life of what you have now, of what you love now.
Yeah. And I just want to tell people like it was not a Disney story. It was not a process. And there were a lot of ebbs and flows. And there were a lot of times where I felt like I was back at square one. And the next week I feel like I'd be on top of the world. So this is just healing is never a linear process. So just kind of bearing that in mind. I took a 2 year hiatus off of dating. And really, I just detoxed all guys from my system. I was like, I'm not hooking up. I'm not casually dating. I'm not doing the whole, I'm going to get underneath somebody to forget about this guy. Like, none of that. I was like, I need to just fix my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I became my number one priority. And the only way you can heal from a narcissist is to go no contact. I'm sorry, there's no way around it. Go no contact. And I just kept working on myself and just wanted to put those pieces for myself together. Like when you have complex trauma and complex PTSD, it's almost like if you're at an art gallery and you're the artist and they asked you to paint something, but like more than half of the painting has been ruined by somebody else against your consent, and there's nothing you can do about that paint that's there.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have to work with like the rest of it. It's like I couldn't I went through a whole identity crisis because I had no idea what percentage of me, like me, my existence, my personality, who I am, was a trauma response. I had no idea who I was. And that was such a scary feeling because like I was so scared that if I went through the healing process, I wouldn't recognize myself anymore. And the incredible thing that I learned about this process is that you get to pick and choose the qualities that you want to have. I'm still me. Like I'm still my hyper, goofy ass, funny self. Like I am still 100% me. I just now have more patience and I'm more aware and I'm more social and I'm more capable of trusting people and I have better circle of friends. Like I'm me, but better.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still have that essence of who you are, that will not change and that will not go away. Like you're still going to be yourself. You're just going to be like a more whole version of yourself and you're
Mm-hmm.
just going to love yourself even more for it.
Yeah, I when you said that you took a few years like off to like tend to yourself and put yourself first as your number one, like what things did you do for yourself to put yourself first? Like what were those things? I know
Yeah,
that's
and you know,
for everyone, but I always like to share like what are those things, you know, because just giving people ideas and whatnot.
yeah, and my number one tool always and forever will be journaling.
Yep.
Journal, 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 journal. It's the tool that I use every single day. It's the tool that I tell my clients to use every single day. It's the tool.
Yes.
Yeah. I focused on my own body neutrality. Like I was not body positive at all. I hated my body, so I worked on body neutrality. And I was doing yoga. I was just being fit and I was just, just taking care of myself physically to the best of my abilities. I was really managing my mental health. And I got to the point where I was so like my goal was to be so secure in myself that I didn't need a man.
Mhm.
I didn't need outside validation for love and I didn't need somebody, wanting me, air quote. to prove my worth as a human being. Like I built up my humanity and my self-love from scratch before I got into dating. Best decision I ever made, by the way. If anybody's wondering, it was the best decision I ever made.
I I can agree with that. I also
Yeah.
did that. I also did that. I was like, no, I got to pick up these pieces and put them back together how I want them to fit into place
Yes.
and build myself to know what I'm doing, because I was more afraid to fall into the pattern of just calling in another narcissist, going
Yes.
right back into it, that I was like, not today. That's not happening. I'm
Yes.
going to do all of the things I need to do to fix me and be me with me. And that, like, a relationship with somebody else can be a bonus, right?
Yes.
In my life, to uplift my life more. But
Yes.
this right
Yes.
here, this puzzle needs to be formed first.
Love this. Yeah, that was exactly my mentality. I was like, I'm having fun and I'm whole being single. There needs to be like, if a guy wants to come into my life and be there, he needs to show me it's more fun being with him than it is by myself.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. And you're like, okay, I'm curious about this over here. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, totally. And then like I noticed that when I did start dating again, not only was I not like, trying desperately to make it work with somebody that it didn't work with, I was a red flag sniffer. I was like a goddamn bloodhound with these red flags these men were throwing at me. And I was like, weird. You're talking about your ex a lot. Like, why are you really all of your exes are still so obsessed with you? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I started like noticing common red flags that I would be looking for. And I finally went to God and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like I want the good men now. Like we're done with this little game. Like, thank you. I trust myself now to sniff them out, but I want a good man now.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift of like being ready, I started calling in such like really awesome guys. And I started having conversations with really awesome guys. And I was just like, okay, yeah, they're nice dude, but just not a right fit.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to walk away from just not a right fit.
Yeah.
Like getting to run that space of like, oh, there's some major red flags here too. You know what? It's just not going to work out for me. And walking away from it without really like a real reason of it.
I love that you said that, because it doesn't have, it's like, what did my bestie said this a couple weeks ago? She's like, making the pieces fit. Like, you don't have to be dating somebody and then make the pieces fit because they're just not like the last relationship that you were just in that was horrible,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I love that you said that it is okay to like be with somebody that's really cool, and it just doesn't work for both of you, and like being
Yeah.
okay with that, like, it's okay, this isn't for me, like, you're a really cool guy, it's just not for me. Like,
Yeah.
there's like something empowering about that, because being able to do that, it's not always the negative, it's not always like,
No.
oh, you got too many red flags, bye, see you later.
Yeah.
There's something about it, just being able to see all of it and recognizing the good also, and just being like,
Yeah.
it's okay to not make the pieces fit.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a guy that I went on a couple of dates with, and he was super sweet. And he was, a very kind person. It just wasn't a match. But
Mhm.
my current boyfriend and I, we were meeting up with some friends. They chose the spot where the guy that I went on like 2 dates with, worked. And I just said hi to him and I introduced him to my boyfriend. And there was like zero awkwardness. There was like zero resentment. It was just chill. Like, not everything has to be a bad experience.
Right. Yes. It's just funny to think about, like, why we always go there. Like, why does our brain automatically go to the negative or the, you know what I mean? And like, to
Yeah.
have that transition of like a perspective shift of that, like, where it doesn't always have to be bad, and
Yeah.
have good you can have
Yeah.
good split ups and have all of that. Like, that's a thing. You can have that. It's
Yeah.
not always crazy, it can
Yeah.
be awkward and a lot. It's not always like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the person that I'm with right now, like, he was like, "Oh, how do you guys know each other?" And I don't hide anything from him. I told him the truth. I was like, "Oh, we just went on a couple dates, realized it didn't work, and then we were like, all right, no thanks."
Mhm.
And my boyfriend was super chill. I was like, "All right." He just left it at that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So when did you decide, like, where was the time where you decided like, oh my gosh, I want to be a coach. I want to like help other women with this because this is like they need this. Like women need this
Yeah.
to come through this. So when did you have that?
You know, I wish I could find like a pinpoint spot where I was like, I want to be a coach, but it was just like it was one of those things where um people were asking me about my experience. I was just talking about it. And a lot of people witnessed the healing process. Like a lot of my friends who were telling me, like, hey, maybe you shouldn't be with that douchebag, were witnessing now my healing process and my growth. And they were like, oh, you're a totally different person now. And I was like, and I think it was like that realization where it's like I didn't realize that I could be so happy after years of just abuse and misery and just not feeling like a human being. And that I went from like literally from not even feeling like a human to feeling so confident and so in love with myself and like a goddess. It's like how it's like I think people like me didn't think that that existed, and people need to know that that exists.
Yes. Yes. So it sounds like you're saying that it was just a process over time of sharing your story
Yeah.
and then just being curious about it, which I also love. Like you don't have to know the thing. Like it doesn't have to be this flag that's like way off into the distance. Like, oh yes, this is what I want to do now. Like you can, take a few steps and like be curious about something and then be like, oh
Yeah.
wait, what's this coaching thing over here? I don't know, and then before you know it, you're like, oh yeah, this is what I want. But just like
Yeah.
taking the steps and doing it. So I love those kind of stories because it's like growth, self-discovery, but then you're like open to all of it. But then when it does hit, it's like right there. It's like right
Yeah.
there. And you're like, this is it. This is what I want to do. This is how I want
This is the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do women find you, or do you work with women and men or just women?
You know, I love men, I adore men, and I do have men who follow me and who ask me for advice. But because I am a female and I have like the female experience, I work predominantly with women.
Mhm.
And so that's like my area of specialty.
Okay. How would women find you if they wanted to work with you on this stuff?
Yeah, so my Instagram is really my number one. It's at real REAL talk coaching.
I like that. I like that handle. That's
Thank you. Because I don't really sugarcoat things, and I'm really honest. And I was like, wow, this is like perfect.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. So yes, go follow Elise on Instagram. And if you guys want to reach out to her and talk about this episode, if it has helped you or touched you in any way, or just have questions about how she can help you, then go ahead and reach out to her on Instagram. Before I let you go, I always like to ask my guests what their superpower is. Would you know what your superpower is?
Ooh, what's my superpower? I think it's being able to help people do a major perspective shift. Like if somebody shares something with me, I'm able to debunk that core belief to the point where it feels irrational and they don't have no choice but to not believe it anymore.
I love that.
Like I make the limiting beliefs sound so dumb to the point that you just can't hold on to it anymore because it's so ridiculous.
I love that. That's a good one. That's a good one. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your story and being open and, vulnerable to let others know. And hopefully that you help someone and touch them with talking with me today. It was so great to have you on. I'm so glad that we got to do this.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor being here. I so appreciate you giving me this platform to speak. And I am so grateful that you have this platform for women to just share and just hopefully provide the world with some healing. Because I think that's what we're now showing up to do.
Yes. Yes, definitely. That's the space. That's the space. Share and have some healing, whether it touches you or somebody else, or just even, you sharing your story. It just makes such a huge impact. And it's what I want. I want people to be able to do that to help others. So thank you for
Hashtag goals. Like, yes.
absolutely. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation, learned something new, or got some gems to take away that will boost your week.
I release a new episode each week, so make sure to click that follow button to not miss what is coming next. If you love the show or want to share a story, send me a quick message. I love hearing from listeners. If you know someone who needs this episode in their life, go ahead and share it with them. I'm sure they would love you for it. If you are looking to connect more, check out the show notes for all the social links, my website. I would love to hear how this episode helped you and what you loved about it. If there's a topic you want to hear about, send that too. All right, ladies, now is the time to release your inner power. If you're ready to break free from burnout and create a life that actually feels good, I've got you covered. You can work with me in a few ways. Join my monthly membership for ongoing support, dive into my workshops for quick breakthroughs, book coaching sessions for personalized guidance, or go all in with my Revive and Recharge Your Life coaching program to build a foundation for lasting change. No matter where you are on your journey, there is a path for you, my friend. Let's get started. DM me or check the link in the show notes to get more information.